Cool. Okay. Well, today we are talking about marriage versus dating. Okay. And so this sparked from a conversation I had yesterday with somebody who was talking about that he's getting ready to get married, and he kind of made it into a big deal. And I was just like, dude, congratulations! Like, you're taking the next step. You're going to go to the next level with your relationship. And he was kind of thrown off a little bit. And I was like, dude, you know how big of a deal this is? He's like, well, I was kind of thinking that it was like, kind of a big deal that like I was making a big commitment. And, I was having these thoughts in my head. I was like, yeah, it is a freaking big commitment, right? It's awesome. Do you know how much better your relationship's going to be once she says yes? And he just like, I didn't even think about that, right? And so this is why it's important, because how long has it been? We've been married for 3 years?
4
years.
4 years.
We've been married for 4 years. But we were together for 4 years before that, right? 4.5 years, I think. And so I remember having this conversation. Do you remember this conversation that I was having? Well, you weren't necessarily there, but do you remember me telling you the story?
Yeah.
So I had a conversation with my mentor at the time. His name was Alex. And he was telling me, or he said he was asking me about Katie, right? He said he had met Katie. We had just shown up to like a mastermind event, and he's like, so like, are you gonna marry her? I was like, I don't know. Like we're good. Like, we have a good relationship. We're on the same page. Like, we don't fight. Like what we have going on right now is really good. Like, I don't want to make it worse. I don't want to change our dynamic when we get married.
Yeah.
Right. And he asked me how long we've been together. I was like, 4 years. He's like, well, like, do you want to spend the rest of your life with her, or do you not? And I was like, yeah. It's like, well, then marry her.
No, he didn't say that. He said, do you want to make more money?
Well, yeah. Well, that was the next step, right? And so the next step was like, well, do you want to? And so I was like, okay. Like, he could tell his soul wasn't sold. He's like, well, do you want to make more money? And I was like, well, yeah, duh. Of course I make more money. He's like, well, then marry her. And then he went off to explain why it was so valuable for me to marry you, right? And do you remember those reasons?
No.
Or actually, let's go back. Let's go to the future. So here's what actually happened, right? It was like, I got this idea. He told me all these reasons of why I should marry Katie. And I was like, oh, sold, right? And so what I did is I went to Katie. Actually, I went to Kobe, which is our daughter, and I asked her first, right? I asked her if I could marry you. She said yes. And then I asked Katie, and then how long did it take us for us to get married?
3 days.
Yeah, not very long, right? We got married, we got engaged and married all within the matter of like less than a month. It was really, really fast. And where did we get married at?
In our living room.
Oh, so romantic. So romantic. Why?
Because it wasn't about the wedding.
Who is a wedding for anyway?
Your guests.
Gosh, what sort of guests deserve for us to spend $20,000 for them to come party for a night?
I don't know. The only guest that we had at our wedding was Kobe and the gentleman who married us' wife. So I guess those two.
Yeah, it's really silly. Well, in all fairness, like, you've had a traditional wedding before, right? That was not your first. Right? It was my first.
I think from a marriage perspective, a lot of people have this like huge build up to the wedding, and then they celebrate their marriage, and then they're together forever, and they like think that it's happily ever after. And it's almost like they work, get married, and then like the work stops.
Yeah. Silly. It's when it starts.
That's when it starts. Yeah. Absolutely.
So a wedding, a celebration, that's really all a wedding is, a celebration. I think it should happen on the back end.
At the end.
At the end, yeah, or not the end, because the end is like not usually like an end means that like we either got divorced or one of us passed away, right? Which is going to happen eventually, but then one of us can't celebrate. So having it like every 5 years, every 10 years, like having anniversary trips. I think that's what people do, anniversary parties, but like having those be where the majority of your money and your energy and your time is spent on accomplishment rather than on the front end.
I think having a party is you can celebrate your marriage. It's not necessarily deemed a bad thing in our eyes. I think our focus was more just on the aftermath of the wedding instead of the wedding itself.
Yes. And we were focused on making money. Maybe think that's what it was.
We were a little busy at the time.
Yeah. And so this was what sold me, right? Is that we can make money. So looking back on it 4 years later, how's it help us make more money?
Yeah.
But why, right? So they don't seem, it doesn't seem like getting married and making more money have a direct correlation to each other. Just like it doesn't seem that getting in shape is going to help you make more money, or taking care of yourself is going to help you with your relationship with your wife. Like those don't necessarily seem like they have direct correlations, but they always end up doing. I don't know. They always end up having an impact.
Yeah.
So in what ways can you directly correlate being married to make more money that you've seen personally?
Yeah, I think the biggest one is just commitment. It is not even an option anymore. It's just like, it's not a question. It's not a lingering thought. It's not a 99% commitment. It is 100% commitment. And therefore it's not even on the radar. It's not even like taking up any mental bandwidth at all. It's just like, we're a team, we're together, we're in it. Let's go.
Like when you say committed, like give me an example of something that is important for us to be committed on. Like commitment is very broad. Like committed, like with our finances, committed to like each other as being lovers, committed to
I think committed to
our
each
family,
other,
like
everything.
Well, I mean, everything is a very broad answer. So again, like what are
All
some specific examples? Yeah,
you just stated. Keep going.
Yeah, very general. Dive into like in what way did it make us more committed by being married versus dating?
Yeah, it turned all of our finances into ours versus his and mine, which just made the decision-making process so much easier. And it just, everything flooded into one bank account versus like, well, how much did I make? How much did you make? How are we going to split these bills? And it was very much a team thing instead of just an individual thing.
Yeah. So we also had businesses as well, or at the time we just had a business, right? And so like I started the business, right? You came into the business. You were in the business at that point. How did that change your perspective on the business?
Yeah, well, it made it mine as well. It made the ownership of what I did that much more.
Yeah.
There was a reason behind supporting something because I had ownership in it.
So when you were working for free, not getting paid, and you weren't married to me, it put a little bit more security under you.
Yes. Those were terrifying times.
Yeah. Fair, right? Totally fair. So having all the money come in, having me on the same page, being committed, like financially, it clearly made sense.
Yes.
Right? What about from a family dynamic? So our family dynamic might be different than other people's out there, right? How is our family dynamic maybe different?
I had a child.
Yeah. And so by us getting married, how did that change the dynamic of the commitment level of our family relationship?
Yeah, well, you needed to be in it for the long haul because it wasn't just me who you needed to build a relationship with at that point. There was also an individual who needed some love and support from you if you were going to stick around.
Yeah. Yeah. So it showed commitment not only to Katie, but also to our 12-year-old Kobe as well, in that she can expect consistency and she can expect stability in our relationship, which ultimately creates stability in her relationship because she lived with us full time, right? Like she lives with us full time, excuse me. And it's important for her to have a solid foundation, right? So that's another element. And it also, like, since then we have had a child together. We have conceived, and that basically was obviously it was important for us to be married in that situation, show us commitment, and then now we have reared our another child together, right? And then from a standpoint of you and I and like being a lover relationship, how has that changed from being married versus being dating?
Yeah, definitely.
Like you just let yourself go probably after you got married?
Just let myself go.
Yeah.
No, it was actually more of a reason for me to show up every day as my best self because I wanted to devote my life to you and be your one and only and be committed to you as an individual. And I think that's an important point. A lot of times I think marriages, as soon as you get married, it's like, oh, we can get comfortable around each other. I don't need to be my best self because I already have you.
Yeah.
and you kind of take it for granted.
It's called the contract syndrome, right? Like you get a contract and you're like, oh, nah, you can't get out of this. Look, you signed on the dotted line, right? That's like the contract syndrome. That's what a lot of people do when they get married, or they have that belief that I got you now. And so basically I can go about being an asshole. I can go about being like, I can let myself go and not living up to the expectation that I originally set for myself, that I was going to go above and beyond and be someone who showed up for you, rather than like, I have a contract. You can't leave me. Right?
You suck.
And in all fairness, you can, but contractually, I get to take half the house, I get to take half the money, I get to take half all the stuff, so I make it really, really difficult. And so I know you probably won't, and so I'm just going to be my worst self or my just enough self.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what people think of as marriage as, and that's where they get security from.
Yeah.
Right.
That's where your comfort zone is.
That's where your comfort zone is. And so if you can, I look at marriage and any relationship as a opportunity to sell that person every single day, and to grow that relationship every single day. And really, like every single day starts back at square one.
Yes.
And that's been a belief that I've had since day one. And that's something I've had to actually sell you on, is that you need to sell me.
Yeah. I hated that. I was like, I don't want to sell you. I've already got you.
Exactly.
Don't make me sell you every day. Contract.
Right? Contract mindset, growth. And when we're on the same page, it becomes that allows us to grow more together, but it keeps us from a comparison game of like, oh, I did this, you did this, and then all of a sudden it becomes like this tit for tat, rather than just like, how much can I love you?
Yes.
Right? So we talked about finances, we talked about family dynamic, and then we talked about lover dynamic. Is there anything else that has changed from marriage versus dating?